Hey guys, and welcome back to STEM Girl Budgeting. If you're new here, I'm a 26-year-old woman living in a high cost of living city with my husband, and I'm currently working on getting my PhD in a STEM field, and my husband works full-time at a tech company. I'm really excited to be filming this video today because I honestly just had a really rough day at work. I'm a scientist and just my experiments were not cooperating today. And so I'm really stoked to be talking about something that is not my science. And don't get me wrong, I do love science. It's a big part of my identity, hence the name of my YouTube channel, but sometimes it's just a little frustrating. So it's good to have other hobbies. So let's get into it. Today I'm going to be talking about the month of June and breaking down our income, our spending, and our net worth. So right here I have YNAB pulled up with our income versus expense report. So I'm just going to be focusing on this top part right here, income, and then I'll be flipping over to the spending breakdown to show you guys our spending. So the reason why I'm showing you both May and June is because June was a little bit weird, where you can see here that the only income we actually earned in the month of June was $270.79. And the reason for this is because we both get paid monthly, and you can see here with my stipend. So I'm a PhD student and my program both covers my tuition and fees and health insurance. And on top of that gives me a living stipend. And so for the months of May and June, that was about $3,800. And you can see here that I got paid on May 1st for the month of May. And then because June 1st was over a weekend, they paid me a little bit early on May 30th for June. So this right here is basically more than double what we actually made in May. And a lot of this was June's money. In fact, I actually think it was like over $11,000 was June's money, and it was like more like $7,000 or $8,000 was May's money. Anyway, so that's context there. Now I'm going to flip over to our spending breakdown so I can just talk about how we spent our money in the month of June. So to start off with, this is just a broad overview of our groups. You can see here that we spend by far the most money on our investments and our housing, and then much less on everything else. But I'm going to kind of go into still like what we spent all this money on. So starting first with investments. Oh my gosh, there's a really loud siren outside again. I feel like I say this every single video, but there's just so much noise here in the city, and I feel like you can kind of hear it over the microphone, so I keep apologizing for it. Anyway, let's just push on though. So for investments, we did contribute to my husband's solo 401k. We opened this for him very recently because he just recently started this 1099 contracting position. And so we decided to contribute pretty aggressively to the solo 401k. So this is almost, I think, half of his income for the month. But that's because we really want to max it out by the end of the year. And then he is also eligible for an HSA. He has a high deductible health plan. And so we did another month contribution to that. And then we put $150 into our joint taxable brokerage on top of that. Okay, going back. So the next largest category group that we spent money on was housing. And so this was actually a lot more than normal because our rent is actually only half this amount. It's $2,125. And I did talk about this in my last video, but just really briefly. So we double paid our month in the rent. I cannot speak right now. We double paid our rent in the month of June. So we paid our June rent here. You can see this at the beginning of June. And then towards the end of June, we paid our July's rent early. And the reason why we did this is because we wanted to start using this credit card to pay our rent. It doesn't charge any kind of transaction fees, and then we get points for the rent. But because we have to pay our rent by check, our landlord requires it, we have to tell Bilt to send that check before the 1st. And so in order to pay July's rent, we have to send the check in June. And so from now on, we're going to be paying our rent a month early. And so just for this 1 month, it's like we double paid our rent. But that's fine. We decided that it was worthwhile just so that we could start getting points on our really expensive rent. Okay, and then so for the rest of our housing expenses, we spent about $135 on household consumables and toiletries and also coins for laundry. And then we spent $60 on our electric bill and $35 on our internet, and then a little bit less than $15 on gas for cooking. And then going back, so you can see here that our next largest category group was by far food. And so we spent a little under $800 on food, which if you watched my budgeting video, you know that that's our goal, is to stay under $800 a month. And so we actually spent a lot more on groceries than we usually do because we did go to Costco and we restocked on a bunch of frozen meat. And so we do that occasionally. We usually actually spend under $400 on groceries, but we assign, I think, $450 to the category in order to cover any extra spending that we might have, such as restocking at Costco, or perhaps, we host dinner or something and we need more groceries than we usually do. And then for dining out, we spent a little bit less than we usually do, under $300, so that's great. Okay, and then for healthcare, so our only healthcare expense for this month was just my husband's health insurance. Like I said before, he's a 1099 contractor. He does not get health insurance through his employer, so we pay for it, and it's a little less than $500 a month. And then our next largest category is transportation. And so, I kind of forgot about this. So this is actually higher than it usually is. Usually we spend maybe around $100 on gas, parking, and public transit. But we also periodically, it's actually pretty often, we get parking tickets, and also sometimes our car gets towed. And the reason for this is because we live in this city where it's just so expensive to get a designated parking spot for your car. So it costs like, a good deal would be like $250 a month, and that's like a good deal to park your car. We would be paying like over $300 a month to park our car here, and it probably wouldn't even be in a spot that's like in a garage, like covered. And so we just decided, we're just going to park on the street and then have to remember to move our car, and we're human and we don't always remember. And so sometimes our car gets towed and sometimes we get parking tickets. And so we just pay for those as they come up. And it has turned out that that is a lot less expensive than paying over $300 a month to have a designated parking spot. We are considering maybe eventually getting a parking spot just because it also drains time having to look for parking, circle around, especially if we're trying to park during like busy times. So maybe we'll eventually transition to having a parking spot, but for now we're not. Okay, so moving on. So the next largest category was my husband's spending. So it was my birthday last month, so he got me some gifts. And then I think he spent this money on protein powder. And then, he spent some guilt-free money, and then also $20 a month for his gym. And then for dues and subscriptions, so these three are our like monthly subscriptions, so streaming services, cloud storage. And then here, this is an annual fee. The reason why it's like a weird amount is because, so my husband decided to open a J Sapphire Preferred, and so because they were doing like 100,000 point like bonus in the month of May, so we opened the card so that he could get that bonus. But I already had the card, and so what we did is I referred him to the card. He got the card, and then once I got the referral bonus, I went ahead and downgraded my card because we obviously don't need two of them. And then I got refunded for the remaining membership, would have been subscription, I don't know what to call it. Anyway, so I had like 4 months remaining, and so they refunded me that. And so it ended up that we only had to double pay for one single month, which was definitely worth it considering we got both a referral bonus and also 100,000 bonus points from my husband's sign up bonus. Man, guys, I'm really thirsty. I keep having to take a break to like drink water. I will say, I have recorded this video twice, which sucks because the first time it like didn't register my cursor while I was talking, so that was really frustrating. Okay, next we have giving. So this is just some Father's Day gifts that we got. And then joint spending. So we went to the movies and we got some ice cream. So that was $43 for this month. And then for my spending, it says I only spent $12, and that's just not true because I got refunded $165 for some running shoes that I didn't like. I ended up trying them out on like a treadmill for like half a mile, and I just didn't like the way that the shoes like fit my feet. I felt like my feet were just like not locked down. I have very narrow feet and they just weren't working, so I decided to return them. So that kind of offset a lot of the spending for this month. But I did spend about $70 on guilt-free spending. This was dinner with some friends and also I think ice cream with some friends. I got some swimsuits, but then I also returned a couple of things, so I net $54 on clothes. I went to the movies one time with some friends, and I think I got popcorn, which is why this is so expensive. And then I got my hair cut for $25. So I'm really sad about this, but I have this girl that like cuts my hair just out of her apartment, and it's like really cheap. She only charges me $20, and then I give her a $5 tip. And she's moving away, and so I'm not going to have like super cheap haircuts anymore, which I'm really disappointed about. But that's okay. I'm gonna have to just suck it up and pay like $60 to go get my haircut at a salon. Okay. And oh, that's it. Okay. Yeah, so that's my, or I guess this is our spending for the month of June. Let's go ahead and take out investments. And then, so then it was $6,394, but let me just open this calculator. So $6,394.92 minus the 1 month of rent that we like double paid. Okay, so our, I guess, actual spending, like our representative spending for the month was more like $4,269.92. So that's pretty good. I feel like that's very much on par with like what our average spending has been for the last couple of years. And yeah, we're pretty simple people. We don't spend like a ton of money on a ton of different things. Neither of us are like super into buying like lots of clothes. We also don't really drink very much. And so it's, yeah, our lifestyles are just pretty cheap beyond just like flying to visit family. And like I like to run, and so I sign up for races and buy running shoes and stuff. But yeah, I feel like that's pretty good. Okay, so let's head over to our net worth tracker. So the first thing I want to say is, so this is very loosely inspired by another YouTuber, Alyssa. She has a YouTube channel called Coin Troll Freak. And I just really liked the aesthetic of her net worth tracker, and so I've mimicked it a little bit, but also kind of made it my own. Anyway, so for our net worth as of the end of June. So starting off with our cash, so this is the combination of both our checking and our savings accounts. And for June, you can see here that we had a balance of $49,045.94. And so this is obviously quite a bit lower than May, and that's because what I talked about before, that we got double paid in May. And so it makes sense that the cash balance was so high in May and then dropped off a bit in June. So that's normal. working on like moving more of our cash into investments. And so I think that our cash balances are going to be a lot lower from now on. Instead of like in the 50,000s, they'll probably be consistently in the 40,000s. Okay, and then for our Roth IRAs, so first mine, it did grow a little bit. So we're done contributing to our Roth IRAs. We already maxed them out for the year. So this is just growth from the market. The market did really well in June. I don't really care what the market does. If it's, going up, great. If it's going down, great. I mean, obviously it's actually better if it goes down for me because I'm years from needing to access my investments. And so, if it goes down, then I just get to buy things at a cheaper price. But if it goes up, it's kind of fun because my net worth goes up. So either way, I guess it's fine. And then for the HSA, we did contribute another month and then it grew a little bit. And then we started contributing to my husband's solo 401k and that also grew a little bit. And then lastly, we have our joint brokerage. And as I showed you guys, we contributed $150 and then it also grew a little bit. So our total assets as of the end of June are $108,589.60. And then for liabilities, so the only thing we have is our credit cards. And so we do pay these off in full every single month, but the balance is a little bit higher than it usually is just because we started paying our rent on credit cards. So our credit card balance should be higher month to month from now on, just because we are adding that $2,000 expense. And then I really like that Alyssa does this, but we also include our tax savings as a liability. And the reason for that is because we pay estimated taxes. And so it would really throw off our net worth if like it's growing, in June, February, March, but then we have to pay our estimated taxes in April and then like our net worth would drop. And so I think it's a lot more representative to just count tax savings, kind of subtract out tax savings from net worth and just like not really think about it. Okay, so our net worth as of the end of June 2025 was $102,491.62. And you can see here that our net worth was technically over $100,000 in May, but in my head, it doesn't really count because like I said, when I went over our income, we got like $11,000 at the end of May. That was actually for June, like June's income. And so we wouldn't have hit $100,000 without that income. So I feel like June was actually our first real month where we did hit over 100,000 net worth, which is pretty cool. I'm really excited about that. And then I also just like to look at our investment totals. So we are almost at $60,000 invested, which is crazy. So this has really grown over the year, 64%. So a lot of this is from actually our contributions as well as the market. I don't know the exact numbers here. But yeah, I think that's really great. We're trying to prioritize investing a lot more now that my husband does have a higher paying job. He doubled his income, and so we're trying to just be a lot more aggressive. So speaking of investment goals, let's go down to our goals. So this is something I like to do to track our goals. So it's fun, obviously, to have net worth goals and be like, oh, I want to hit 100,000 net worth. I want to hit 100,000 invested. But I don't really have control over that. I don't have control over the market. But what I do have control over is my contributions. So my husband and I have a goal to invest $50,000 this year. So this is our investment goal. And so where do we get this number? We want to max out all 4 of our tax advantage accounts, which are our Roth IRAs, my husband's HSA, and my husband's solo 401k, at least the employee contribution for it. He can also do a profit sharing contribution. And I might talk about that in a future video, and we might make a profit sharing contribution at the beginning of 2026, but not for certain yet. And then we want to do another $8,200 in our taxable brokerage so that we can make it to this $50,000 investment goal. So where are we? So are we on track for this? Okay, so we already maxed out my Roth IRA for the year, so at 100% completion. And then we also maxed out my husband's Roth IRA, and we are right halfway there on his HSA. And then for the solo 401k, like I said, we just started this in June, and we did make a pretty hefty contribution from his paycheck, but we're only 20% there. And then we're also about 20% on our taxable brokerage as well. So we're halfway through the year, 45% of the way to our investment goal. But I do feel like this is pretty reasonable considering that our income has increased a lot. So I actually think we might be able to surpass this goal, but I'm not 100% sure yet. It just depends on how the year goes and if we have unexpected expenses come up. But I would be really, really pleased if we were able to invest $50,000. Like, we hadn't even invested anywhere close to $50,000, the first couple of years that we were, married, to now being able to do $50,000 in 1 year is just so, so cool. So really grateful for my husband and that he was able to get this higher paying job, and that we're on the same page in terms of our investment goals. It's really cool to see. So I'm really excited to see where our journey takes us in this regard. So speaking of investment goals, I do think it's really fun to take this number and just play around with it a little bit. So let's head over to this calculator that I have. So I am 26 years old, and my full retirement age in the United States, which is where I live, would be 67. And so I'm going to put our current investments in right here. And then assuming no additional contributions, a 10% rate of return with a 3% rate of inflation, we would have over $1 million in today's dollars at retirement. So this is accounting for inflation. And that's just really amazing. Like, we're only 26 and we already have enough money that we're going to have a little over $1 million at retirement. And it's going to feel like $1 million in today's dollars. And that's pretty cool. And then I also like this, looking at this. So assuming a safe withdrawal rate of 4%, there's debates over whether or not you can do more or less than that. And I think probably the best approach for most people is to do a dynamic withdrawal rate, depending on what's going on with the market. But that's, that can be in a different video. We don't need to talk about that today. But just assuming just a flat 4%, we could withdraw over $40,000 from this portfolio every year, which would be $3,400 a month. So this is really cool. I really like doing this because I think it just helps put things into perspective that we are really taking care of our older selves and that we aren't going to have to, stress too much about saving for retirement. And if you consider the fact that we're investing at least $4,483 per month, this is going to be crazy. If we kept that up until we were 67, we would retire with $13.7 million in today's dollars, which would be almost $550,000 annually in today's dollars. This is absolutely insane. We do not need this much money. So we're definitely going to either retire early or back off on contributions because there's just no way we're ever going to need this much money. Just, you guys saw our spending. We just don't. But that brings me to my next topic, which is Coast Fire. So this is what I actually wanted to talk about. So Coast Fire, I'm going to explain kind of what this is and how my calculator works, but current age 26, retirement age 67, you have to kind of think about what's your annual spending going to be in retirement. So I'll just tell you guys right now, we do not spend very much money, but we're only 26. So I just have no idea what we're going to actually end up spending in retirement because right now we don't own any kind of property. We don't have kids. We obviously are okay, not having like super expensive things. And maybe we'll always be like that. Like, I don't really know. But yeah, I just decided to double what our current spending is as like a starting point for this goal. So we spend less than $60,000 a year. So I put $120,000 annual spending in retirement. And then our current investments are the $59,544 with the additional monthly contributions of $4,483. And then I had the same assumptions here. And so this information, so just this information actually, and this information, sorry, taken all together, I would need to have $172,000 invested today in order to be able to retire at 67 with a portfolio that would be able to yield $120,000 a year, or at least like I would be able to withdraw that amount without that portfolio hopefully running out. And so I obviously don't have $172,000 in my portfolio right now. I have a little less than $60,000. So what this calculator is going to do is it's going to figure out how long is it going to take before I hit that point where I don't need to contribute to retirement anymore. And so if I've lost you, I feel like this makes a lot more sense with this graph. So I'm here, right? 26 years old. I'm making contributions. So I'm starting at almost 60,000 making contributions. And then at a certain age, you hit this point where you can go one of two ways. So you can keep contributing, and just your investments are going to grow. And then eventually you're going to hit this point. And this green line right here is our financial independence number. So this is 120,000 divided by 4%, which is the safe withdrawal rate. And that's how much money you would need invested in order to take out that 120,000 per year. Yeah, that's in today's dollars. And so I would hit that, way before retirement age. So you also have this choice once you reach this point. Once you hit this Coast Fire number, you can just stop contributing and then follow this path of the blue line where it just grows on its own. So you're not adding in any money, but that money is just compounding and compounding. Like the interest is just, adding up over time, and you end up just coasting up very beautifully to this green line. And so this allows you to retire at normal retirement age, but having invested everything that you need at a very early age. So that's the beauty of Coast Fire. It's pretty cool. And so for me, I'm 26 right now. And with these very specific assumptions, and maybe you don't agree with these assumptions, and that's fine, but the assumptions that I'm currently using, it's going to take me 2.3 years before I hit that point. So I'll be 28 years old. My portfolio will have to be around $200,000 in today's dollars in order for that to happen. And then if I kept contributing and I didn't stop, so instead of coasting, following this blue line, if I kept contributing and following this purple line, I would be able to become financially independent at the age of 48, and me and my husband wouldn't have to work at all anymore. And so, yeah, this really just gives us options. So once we start hitting these Coast Fire numbers, we're going to be able to kind of just take jobs that we want to take. We don't need to save like a ridiculous amount of money. So, maybe we can take lower paying jobs that we're more passionate about. Maybe we can take breaks from like working and just work enough to cover our living expenses, or we keep working, we keep making money, and then we end up retiring way early. So it's just going to give us a lot of options, and that's what we want. We want options, we want flexibility, we want to be able to spend our lives the way that we want to and really live life to its fullest. And I don't feel like we're really sacrificing anything right now by being so aggressive. I feel like we have everything that we need, and we've been so fortunate to have a lot of income that we can work with and not too many obligations. We're debt free. We both received full tuition scholarships for college, and we both worked throughout college, so we don't have student loans. We paid off our car. And so we really just have this goal of just investing as much as we can to reach coast fire and perhaps financial independence early. So yeah, anyway, I hope this video was interesting. Sorry if it was a little bit long, but if you're interested in following more on my journey, I love making videos about budgeting, also obviously, talking about our income, our spending, our net worth, and our investments. So if you're interested in any of that, please subscribe. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys later.